don't know. Hmm.
Oh, 30 inches, Allison. We're now annoyed when we get an inch because we're done with winter, at least mentally.
Yeah,
Yep.
I don't know if meteorologically we're done, but mentally we're done with
Yeah.
winter.
Yeah. There are some big conferences in the international schools market, but I don't know about a gifted one anymore. Now I'm curious. I'll have to look. All right. We have grown Wisconsin.
87 in Austin. Oh boy.
Oh, South by Southwest is so
Yeah.
cool. Okay, there's the links to the C program. And we are about to start.
And we are starting. All right. Dr. Yates, let's start. All right. It is 10 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time at the Center for Applied Imagination. And welcome to the 2026 Creativity Expert Exchange Conference. I'm Dr. Roger Firestein, Associate Professor Emeritus at the Center for Applied Imagination at Buffalo State University. Thank you for the nice. We're already getting applause here. In a recent meeting, the faculty of the center figured that this is about the 25th Creativity Expert Exchange. We began this first in person, and over the last 6 years, we've been doing this virtually. At last count, we have over 330 registered participants from more than a dozen countries. Welcome, everyone. We're delighted that you're here. Welcome. Now, we call event and exchange because it allows the faculty, the alumni, current students of Creativity and Change Leadership Department, and individuals who are doing interesting work in just about any aspect of creativity to share some of their latest findings, both from the research perspective and from the field of practice. Now, the faculty of the Center for Applied Imagination organizes and presents this conference in addition to teaching, advising, and conducting research and doing work in the community. And we want to keep this conference free so that we can make it available to as many people as possible. But we do incur some costs here. Hosting the conference costs the department about $3,000, and this cost would be a lot greater if it wouldn't be for our generous concurrent session speakers who donate their time. Thank you, all concurrent session speakers who donate your time. Um, as I mentioned, the cost is around $3,000. We've raised about $1,100 in donations, and we'd love to close this gap. So please donate if you can so that we can continue to provide an extraordinary event to you. And I'll be asking you for donations again tomorrow. And Dr. Puccio has just put the link in the chat. If you've donated already, thank you very much. And if you wish to donate, you can begin by going to the Eventbrite page using the same link you used to register for C. Just re-register for the conference, and this will be available through Friday at 5 o'clock. We really, really appreciate that. Thank you. There's a wonderful quote that I came across recently from Alex Osborne, the inventor of brainstorming, and really our founder. And he's also the O in the advertising agency BBDNO and author of the landmark book Applied Imagination, which you've all have read. Right? Osborne said, "Nothing could give me more satisfaction than to teach people how to make greater use of their most priceless possession, their creative imagination." And that's why all of us at the faculty continue to do this year after year after year and day after day. And we continue on probably for the rest of our lives because we love this work. And if you feel the same way, you're at the right place. So today and tomorrow, we have two keynotes coming up and two concurrent sessions. And so let's begin. Please, if you would, remember to mute your microphone. Make sure that your name matches your registration. Turn off your camera if you don't want to be recorded. Be in speaker view and communicate in the chat. Now, many of our presenters, like myself, are going to be asking you to keep your cameras on. please do that. That makes us feel great. We want to see your smiling faces. So if you're able to now, put your camera on so we can see your smiling face and we can welcome you here as part of the beginning of this. Now, creativity education can be transformative. It was for me. I moved to Buffalo in 1978 from Colorado, as a matter of fact, from this very house that I'm at right now, to get my master's degree in this department. And I'm still doing this life-changing work, and I absolutely love it. So now let's take a look at a video from several of our program graduates about how they're applying what they learned here at the Center for Applied Imagination. Now, some of you might have seen this before, but we have some new folks here, and we want to highlight some of the amazing things that our graduates have done. Let's take a look at the video.
I was in a crisis of self-confidence, to be honest, when I started. I never thought about entering into a degree of creativity and change leadership. I had my own company, as a small company, a small business. I've been an entrepreneur all my life.
It was interesting. I wasn't actually looking for grad school. I did know that pursuing an MBA, which was an option, did not feed me at all. And in fact, I was like, yeah, I could do it, I'm assuming. But there's no drive, there's no pull for it.
I hired as an assistant professor teaching fashion marketing and merchandising classes in the Department of Fashion and Textile Technology. And creativity was a kind of like a big challenge for me.
I think there were many things happening. At my work, I was low. I was saying overwhelmed, and I was feeling that I was not doing something for myself. I need constant change. I am a person that I get bored very fast.
Back then, I was in pharmaceuticals and looking to transition. So transition is something that was a little bit more in alignment with what I saw myself doing for the rest of my life.
So this came to a point in my life that was really critical because whereas I was certainly excited and happy about a new life in the United States, coming from Italy, I was also kind of scared and a little bit lost and vulnerable.
And so what that meant was two aspects of my life. There was a fair amount of dissatisfaction. I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't have any clue.
The challenge, I would say, is being in a position to paddle my own canoe, wanting to have the tool set that I needed in order to catapult me into another direction.
So when this was presented to me, it was really a sweet spot for the point I was in my life. It was really critical enrolling in the program.
I didn't expect that all the courses are very engaging. They really help students to change their way of thinking.
The amazing part of this is that you can get as far as you want.
A lot of time spent in reflection, a lot of interaction, and small team work and group work.
A place where misfits could come and be their unique self without having to capitulate or conform. This is where you can get it wrong and learn from it and leverage it. We have a framework that we get with the program, then you put the fabric on it.
The first aha, the first cognitive aha.
It really helped me to see my role as a leader. I was able to apply whatever I learned from class to my personal life.
I always wanted to teach, and I'm in a way teaching now. I'm actually doing what I wanted to do, and now it makes sense. It really changed the way I see the world.
To make a long story slightly longer, my relationships have changed for the better. Transformative, confidence building, a lot of intrapersonal growth.
This place made me grow as a creative leader. The best choice of my life, I always say, is marry Tim, and the second is to enroll in this program.
It was liberating. If nothing else, this could be that next big thing for you.
I never get tired of seeing that video because if you've just seen from some of our alumni There is a tremendous amount of power with what we do. And in many cases, it is absolutely life-changing. And that's our mission, to ignite creativity around the world. And we do that one person at a time. I'd like to take a moment to overview our agenda this morning. Here we go. So first, we're going to have some welcome and introductions. Then Dr. Hollinger will tell you a little bit more about our keynote speaker in a moment. We'll have a virtual meal coffee break from 11:30 to 12:15 Eastern Daylight Time. From 12:15 to 1 o'clock Eastern Time, we'll have concurrent sessions. That'll be your first block. There'll be a break between 1 o'clock to 1:15. We'll follow up then by 1:15 to 2 o'clock Eastern Time, some concurrent sessions, block two, and you'll do a little wrap up in your concurrent session room. Go to the Zoom link for the sessions you wish to attend, and that is in the chat. We're putting those in the chat right now. They've been in the chat. So go ahead, and that will take you to your concurrent session rooms. All right. Now, at the end of C, on Friday night, for those of you who are in Western New York, we invite you to join us at an event in Butler Library. And we're going to be engaging in a creative process facilitated by a local artist who's a former student of ours, who's designing a mural that's going to be installed in the future site of the Parnes Creativity Collection. And you can register for this event in Eventbrite. And for those of you that are interested in the graduate program, we're going to be conducting a graduate program information session on April 9th from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. New York time. And you can use the link posted in the chat to sign up for more information. And finally, we invite you to stay in touch with the Center for Applied Imagination by following us on social media and signing up for our mailing list. Now, all of those links are being posted in the chat, so please go ahead and follow us there. Now, during the meal break or coffee break or whatever you'd like to call that, wherever you are in the world, the main room is going to remain open for anyone who wants to network and connect with others. And our concurrent sessions will begin again today at 12:15 Eastern and end at 2:15 New York time zone. The link for the conference sessions are in the conference program found in the C website, but they're also posted in the chat box down below. Take a look at the chat box and the URL to the conference program. Look at the chat box. That's going to give you the links. And we have several concurrent sessions going throughout the day at the same time. Don't worry if more than one session interests you. You're going to be able to see all the other sessions because we're recording them. And we'll let you know how to access the recordings when they become available soon after the conference. So if you don't get to see a participant that you'd like to see, a session you'd like to see, you're going to have a chance to see it. Tomorrow, we recommend that you join us during the virtual coffee time between 9:30 and 10 o'clock New York time, as many of you did this morning, just to make sure that your connection's working. Have a little coffee with us, warm up. All right. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Molly Hollinger, Assistant Professor of Creativity and Change Leadership. And Dr. Hollinger will introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. James Kaufman, Professor of Educational Psychology at the University of Connecticut. Dr. Hollinger, over to you.
Thanks, Roger.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Dr. James C. Kaufman, who is a professor of educational psychology at the Neag School of Education at the University of Connecticut. He has written or edited more than 50 books, including Lessons in Creativity from Musical Theater Characters, The Cambridge Handbook of Creativity, Creativity 101, a book on terrible baseball pitchers that he wrote with his father, and a book on pseudoscience with his wife. He also has a forthcoming book on creativity in the movies, and in it you can find the favorite movies of several prominent creativity scholars. In addition, he has published over 400 articles and chapters and has developed many theories, most notably the 4Cs with Dr. Ron Bagetto. Oh, there we go. Hi, James. And he has developed several self-report measures of creativity and is currently focusing on the positive outcomes of creativity. He has won many awards, including Mensa's Research Award, the Torrance Award from the National Association for Gifted Children, the World Council for Gifted and Talented Children's International Creativity Award, and APA Division 10's Berlin, Arnhem, and Farnsworth Awards. I think you swept, you've gotten all the Division 10 awards. He also co-founded the Journal of Psychology, Aesthetics, Creativity in the Arts, also known as PACA. James, in his own words, described himself as a failed creative writer, despite his clear accomplishment in the field of creativity and having written the book and lyrics to the musical Discovering Magenta, which played in New York City and also has a cast album. He lives with his wife, Allison, his sons, Jacob and Asher, 2 dogs, an African gray parrot, 5 rats, and an axolotl, which, if you're not sure what that is, you're not the only one. And finally, I would describe James as exceptionally kind and generous. He has had no small impact on my life. And I know this is true of many other individuals in the field who he has also mentored. But I have to say, James, you really went above and beyond with me because you also introduced me to my husband. So thank you for that. Um, and the people that he works with are not only his colleagues, but also his dear friends. So I think that is the perfect segue into the topic he's going to be talking about today, which is his latest book, The Creativity Advantage, which talks about the connections between creativity and well-being, such as self-insight, healing, and leaving a meaningful legacy. So with that, I will turn it over to the esteemed Dr. James C. Kaufman.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Molly. I am so proud of Molly and so excited to have her introduce me. And the 5 rats have died, unfortunately, but we do now have also a gecko named Echo. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the creativity advantage. And before I dive in, it almost feels kind of weird talking about this because it's not like there's a huge amount of anti-creativity. So like I'm talking about all the wonderful things that can happen when people are creative. And my guess is to a certain extent, I'm preaching to the chorus because of course creativity is important. It's like defending puppies, defending ice cream. But most people prefer the status quo. Most new products fail. And there's been a number of studies that people say they like creativity, but then they show these implicit biases against creative people, or they don't understand exactly what creativity is. To give one example, there was a study last year where CEOs give a speech every quarter to the stockholders, and they studied whenever the CEOs mentioned anything involving innovation or creativity. So a year later, the stock prices have gone up and they've been successful. But in that month or two following, the shareholders dump the stocks plummet. So even though creativity pays off, when people hear about it, they get a little nervous. So it's easy to make the case for how big C helps the world. Most of the major advances throughout history are because of creativity. I mean, I'm talking to you remotely. I'm using my laptop. I'm using Wi-Fi. I'm using Zoom, all this stuff. Without big C, we don't have any of that. Pro C, it may be less groundbreaking, but it has obvious value. the stuff that we love, the stuff that makes our lives fun, enjoyable, that's all pro C. At the individual level, creative kids are more likely to get better grades and higher test scores. Creative adults are more likely to get promoted, succeed, and that's all good, right? Except if you want higher grades or if you want better workers, conscientiousness is much more associated with every positive outcome, like better grades, better work performance, better test scores, all that stuff. And creativity is linked to cognitive ability, and a lot of folks argue that that's the reason why it predicts stuff. There are a lot of other benefits that are beyond grades and work performance, even though most of the studies on why creativity matters is about grades or work. But it's very important to start off with the fact creativity helps GPA, it helps test scores, it helps good workers. So all of this stuff is a bonus. That it's not, oh, well, if you try to encourage creative students or if you try to hire creative workers, you're sacrificing something. You're not. It's also very important for me to emphasize all these benefits are not related to creativity level. So people who are more creative don't reap more of these benefits than people who are less creative, as long as you are creative and you spend time being creative. So if this stuff interests you, I go into all this and more in The Creativity Advantage. It's from Cambridge University Press. And I highlight 5 types of advantages. Before I kind of go into this, I just want to briefly cover this larger context of meaning in life. So, and some of you may know this, hedonia is short-term pleasure, positive emotions, kind of in the moment stuff. Eudaimonia is longer term. It's life satisfaction, kind of that kind of happiness that comes with being content, meaning. And all this stuff is related to having meaning in life. And I got very, very interested in meaning in life, oh Lord, about 10 years ago. I spent the summer in California with my parents. My father had been diagnosed with stage 4 bladder cancer and wasn't expected to live. And I would spend the days with them. I'd spend the evenings reading this stuff and beginning to work on a paper. As it turned out, my dad was in the 8% of people who responded to the chemo. He's still around and has been cancer free for 5 years, and that's marvelous. But it started this interest. So usually I say there are 3 dimensions of meaning, but more and more I've gotten kind of convinced about this 4th dimension that people have just started studying. So I'm going to talk about all 4 of these. Coherence is the cognitive component of meaning. And that's, do you understand your past decisions? Do you know why you made the choices you made? Do you understand the consequences, their impact on your life? Or do you feel like your life has been this random series of chaotic and unfair events? Also, do you feel that your values and your beliefs are consistent with your actions? This is particularly important for feeling like you have meaning at work. Because if you have these are your core beliefs, but then everything you're doing at work is going against it. So if health is very important to you, but you're working for a cigarette company, that disrupts coherence. Significance. Is your life worth living? Do you matter? So do you matter to other people? Do you have friends? And do you feel like if you disappeared, people would notice? And to a certain extent, do you matter to the universe? Would it matter if you'd never been born? Purpose. And purpose is kind of the motivational aspect. Do you have goals for the future? regardless of how old you are? Do you have things that drive you to keep going where you wake up and you're like, okay, I want to do this? And then this new one, experiential appreciation. Do you enjoy your life? Do you appreciate the little things? Do you see the beauty in everyday life? There are so many things every day, I mean, just having your cup of coffee while talking to people you like, all these little moments. Do you enjoy them? Do you recognize them? Are you grateful? Or are you just, yeah, yeah. So there are many, 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 many ways that creativity can help us find meaning and generally just enjoy our lives more. Now, most of these benefits benefit the creator. And me and my former advisor, Bob Sternberg, kind of have a regular back and forth over email where his focus is on transformational creativity, helping others. Obviously, I think that's important too. There is research that shows that people who help others and who are tend to be happier with their own lives, and that these things are kind of linked. That if you have meaning, if you enjoy your life, and if you are doing better, you're more likely to be helping other people. So you have self insight. And a lot of this work is with narratives. Um, Narratives of any kind. And this can be blogs, diary entries, therapy sometimes, can help us understand ourselves and our past. So there's a lot of work on the writing cure. This started with James Pennebaker, where when people write on a regular basis, usually at least 20 minutes, at least 3 times a week, about an emotional topic, you gain understanding and kind of this, to me, almost bizarre array of good things happen. Oops. So there has been so many studies on this. And when I wrote the Creativity Advantage, I revisited this literature, and I feel like whenever I do that, I find, oh, somebody found it wasn't true. For this, people just kept finding stuff. There's better physical health, and not just self-report. Like they looked at the details of like cancer patients and the type of cells that are good for you. Better mental health, reduced depression, reduced anxiety, reduced dangerous risk taking. So more likely to drive safely, stuff like that. Better grades, more likely to find work. So why? Think of your mind like this messy closet, but instead of clothing, it's filled with all these worries, intrusive thoughts, anxiety, ruminations, all these kind of negative thoughts. But what narrative writing does is it kind of gives you these coat hangers and you can arrange and you've documented it. It doesn't have to still be in your head. It frees up mental resources. It reduces cognitive load. And that basically gives us more resources to cope with stress and do all this other stuff. This is related to healing. When we are gaining self insight and we remember our past and we think about past events, what we can do is sometimes we can revisit and we think about what we did, and including particularly things that were not necessarily good events. And we can kind of reinterpret them. We can think of new ways of looking at it. And this is called cognitive reappraisal. And there's a lot of ways we can cognitive reappraise, many, many ways, but 3 of them that are probably the most studied. One is self-distancing, where we just remove ourselves from that event. That's not necessarily the best one. Another one is we can use temporal distance. We imagine this event as we are in the future, when it's less raw or when we've done better. There's also positive reframing. We try to find this silver lining. Well, on one hand, we broke up, but on the other hand, if we hadn't broken up, I wouldn't have met the current love of my life. Or I didn't get into my dream school, but because I went to my second choice school, I ended up moving across the country and I met some good friends. And I don't know if I would have majored in this, all these kinds of people who are good at cognitive appraisal are also more creative, particularly at divergent thinking. And this kind of makes sense because you're thinking, well, what if? Maybe this, maybe that, maybe that. And the people who are more creative not only are better at cognitive appraisal, but they're better at using it for good outcomes. They're better at using this thing of cognitive appraisal to bring themselves to emotional equilibrium. So you feel bad, now you feel normal, or at least good, or better, or good. And in general, there's a whole other line of research I'm not going to go into. Just being creative because it's fun is a way of getting yourself out of a bad mood. If you're feeling sad, if you're feeling angry, if you're feeling anxious, if you draw, if you write, these things just they elevate your mood. There's also post-traumatic growth. When people experience a traumatic event, there are many, many negative repercussions, and this is things like post-traumatic stress disorders. Sometimes in this aftermath, people go through a period of coping. They reflect, they try to make sense of it. Um, this period, and it's very important to emphasize, not the trauma, but this period can lead to post-traumatic growth. A metaphor that I've read that I like is the idea that if a plank of wood breaks, then you can add like sealant to it and it strengthens the board. But it's the work you did on the board that helps the plank of wood, not the break. So post-traumatic growth, it can involve more gratitude. You can have become closer with people, spiritual awakenings. Oftentimes people during this period will try to prevent other people from having to deal with this trauma. Creative people are more likely to undergo post-traumatic growth. Then there's drive. So usually when we study creativity and motivation, it's a standard dichotomy. Intrinsic motivation, you do something because you love it or you get meaning out of it. Extrinsic motivation is for an external reason, grades, money, praise, although that could be either one. And there's been so many studies on this, so many, many, many studies. It's only been recently we've kind of broken out of this intrinsic, extrinsic. So a lot of times people create for pro-social reasons to help other people. A lot of this work is by Marie Forgiar, who's also done a lot of work on the post-traumatic growth. So, and a lot of this stuff, Matthias Benedict did a great recent study, and then me and a team of folks did a very big and very annoying study where we asked people to just say why have been creative recently, and then we used these open-ended responses and looked at them when we're about to submit. So we found passion, challenge, and fun as three different, clearly distinct elements of intrinsic. But we also found things like relieving boredom. People were just inspired and wanted to create. Self-expression, problem solving, or just practical. Well, I had to figure this out, and so I was creating. And we also found connection. People create because it is something to do with other people. And indeed, another creativity advantage is this connection. Because creativity is kind of marvelous at connecting with us with others. So there's a lot of research on different creative programs. Usually the arts can help struggling kids make friends. And you have all these myths of creative people being weird or loners or mentally ill. But if you look at what the actual research shows, I mean, creative people have larger social networks. They have more close friends. They do better in love. I mean, there's a lot of research in evolutionary psych on creativity and partners, and that when people look at personal ads, signs of creativity is very, very attractive to others. And then there's more globally, so Jeff Smith and the museum effect, when we're engaging with creative work. So when we go to an art museum and when we see these paintings and we're with other people, we feel more connected, not just to other people, but the world. We feel like this global citizenship. I've been doing some recent work on why people engage with the arts in general. And there tend to be three broad motivations. One is cognitive. So I want to learn, I want to grow, I want culture. Another is emotional. I want to either be excited and involved, or I want to distract myself and just relax. But the third is social. It's something that connects us. It's something that makes us, we can experience with others. It's a very central reason why we create and why we consume. And then finally, you have legacy. So we all know that we're going to die someday, and we don't talk about it usually, but this sucks. And if we think about it, oh my God. I mean, no other species has to deal with this. Molly mentioned all of my animals. I mean, my dogs don't know they're going to die. The axolotl is just kind of floating in his tank and missing eating all of the b- frozen bloodworms we feed him. Nobody has these big existential issues. It's just people have to deal with it. And this can be a real source of anxiety for people. And so this is something like Otto Rank was writing about this over 100 years ago. More recently, the very recently deceased Robert J. Lifton, who is just brilliant, wrote about this a lot. And it's this idea of symbolic immortality. And it's this idea that you will die, but you can keep part of yourself alive even when you're gone. And it's important to note there are many ways that people can feel this. I mean, a huge one is children. This can be, of course, biological children, but also children you've mentored or fostered or taught. So it doesn't just need to be, it's not just genetics. It's just this feeling of nurturing, encouraging future generations. A lot of people feel this with religion or spirituality. So perhaps literally feeling that they will be immortal or feeling this just connection to everything. Other people feel this through nature. The idea that, we're breathing molecules that people who lived 1,000 years ago breathed. The idea that trees and the planet, hopefully, will still be here after we're gone. And then there's these transcendental experiences, and this can be things like flow and those intense moments of joy. It can also be really anything that's passionate. I mean, so Lipton talked about, some people find it in war and violence, which isn't great. Others in sex, others in hallucinogenic drugs, which, you know, but the fifth one is creativity. And of course, the obvious thought is big C. And this idea that, Shakespeare died how many years ago? And we're still reading and watching his work. But it doesn't just have to be big C. So for one, it could be if you're just part of big C. So this is the Hoover Dam, and people in water resource management have studied this, and they analyzed these speeches and writings of people who worked on it. the architects, the planners, the politicians, all the people involved. And as they were working on it afterwards, they had these themes of just legacy and all these kind of very positive emotions of I'm doing something that will last. It can also be prosy. And again, this could be, of course, creative products. I mean, a lot of the stuff we enjoy is prosy, as I mentioned. And even if this may not last forever and ever, it will still last. And there's also, of course, process related prosody. So a doctor who uses their creativity to save lives, a teacher who uses their creativity to educate generations and generations of students. All of this can help symbolic immortality. But even then, it doesn't have to be high level. These paintings are by my grandmother, who, wow, my grandmother died about 25 years ago. She never got to meet my kids. But these two paintings she did, and she was not a painter. I don't even know if she was particularly good, honestly, but they're pretty. They make me think of her. And these are hanging in my living room. I see them every morning. My kids see them every morning. It doesn't even need to be family. I mean, I found a painting at Goodwill of a sloth wearing a ring of flowers, and it's in my office. I have no idea who painted it or if they're alive or dead. I'm sure I have a lot of random stuff that I've gotten a Goodwill or Salvation Army by somebody who's no longer with us. And of course, within families, this work can stay for generations. We still have the recipes of my grandfather, who was a baker. He wrote it down. We still have it. I don't cook, but actually, very few people in my family cook, but somebody hopefully is using this and baking it. But again, we have scrapbooks or recipes, memoirs, art, stories. All of this stuff is a form of symbolic immortality. So, where does the creativity most thrive? If we look at Vlad Glavinov's 5 A's, where you have the actor, the action, the artifact, and then audience and affordances, pretty much it's the actor and action. In other words, the person who's being creative and then in the actual process. If we look at the 4 C's,
Uh-oh, looks like we lost James. Um, so while we're waiting for him to come back in, I would encourage you, if you have any questions that are coming up, please post those in the chat, because we will have some time for Q&A after James. Thank you, Veronica. I appreciate that. We'll have some time after James's talk for Q&A. And I know that he actually enjoys, that's his favorite part of speaking is the Q&A portion. So yeah, perhaps one of uh, his I don't know what's going on in Glastonbury, but perhaps one of his uh, animals came around, or his sons for that matter, who are still on the younger side.
I have no idea what just happened. I'm so sorry.
Well, perfect timing. I was improvising while we were waiting for you. Um,
Very
so welcome back. Yeah, you
that
woke everyone
that
up.
that was so weird. Okay. Um, okay. Um, and really any of the 4 C's, but particularly, mini, little, pro. And then we have the elephant in the room. And I know that tomorrow's speaker is going to talk about artificial intelligence. Um, And I'm going to go into a little bit. So where does AI live? Well, it's in affordance. It lives in the action and the artifact. And David Cropley did a great study that just came out where AI's output is high little c, low pro c. So if we put them together, where does the creativity advantage live? Where does AI live? We see this overlap primarily in the action, the creative process, and little c. And unfortunately, this is the crux of it. That is the average person being creative. That's where you can get the biggest benefit, and that's where AI can take away that benefit, as we'll see. So what happens? I mean, certainly some students will use generative AI as a tool, as a collaborator. And in this way, I mean, it's not that much different than a dictionary or just using a Google search or any of this stuff, any other affordance you might have. In which case, it's really not that big of a deal. I mean, the skills to craft a good prompt or ask the question might be a little different than using Google. Maybe it saves a step or two. But if the student is still engaged in the creative process, I don't think that's terrible. But what happens as generative AI goes from being a tool or collaborator to the sole or primary author? I mean, if generative AI is used to basically create an entire work, the person doesn't really enter the creative process. And the creativity advantage happens when people are being creative. And it's important to note, again, there's very recent work on this. I mean, there was just a study where they had students use generative AI and they were monitoring back channel what they were doing. And they also asked them, how are you using it? And the students would say things like, oh, I was collaborating and editing it and using it for ideas. But if they were looking at the actual, like the keystrokes, a lot of them were just taking the output and putting it right there. So there's the fact we're not always aware, but then also it's shifting a bit what we're doing when we're being creative. So instead of generating ideas, we're editing, judging, evaluating. And again, right now, generative AI is mostly doing mini C, little c, maybe low level pro C. A lot of people, okay, is that good enough? So we have a paper under review, huge paper with a whole lot of dimensions. Um, it's not, it's not good. So for one thing, as you may have read or heard, generative AI is rated as more creative often than humans. It's because it tricks us. Usually, you can look at the creativity of writing at the word level or at the document level. And at the word level, it means it's just more creative language, better vocabulary, more interesting word choices. At the document level, it's about the ideas. Usually, if you have more creative language, you also have more creative ideas. Generative AI improves word level creativity, but it is notably worse at idea level creativity. And well, AI raters don't really notice anything, but human raters don't notice this. We have this heuristic in our head. Oh, it's well written, therefore it's the ideas are good. At some point, people will either they won't ever realize this, which is terrifying for its own reasons, or they will. But either way, the other thing is we're not used to large bodies of work. So if you have, again, AI produce not one thing, but 400 stories and have 400 stories by humans. If you're reading all 400, that's when you see AI is limited. It does a few basic ideas. And don't get me wrong, people do this too. If you have people writing on the same topic, you're only going to get a certain number of types of answers, but there will be outliers for humans. And those outliers are still good. AI, if they have outliers, that's when it hallucinates. So it's both, it sounds more creative, but it's actually less creative. And there's the fact that there's the chance for more with humans. So shockingly, what we found is that ever since ChatGPT was released, the creativity in language goes up and the creativity in ideas are going down. And longer term, I mean, AI is trained on what it knows and what exists. I mean, obviously, big C innovation is rare, the kind of things that shift paradigms and all this. It's not like that's common or most people will ever do it, but it's possible. I don't know if AI is possible of doing that. And then there's just the fact, I mean, right now, most of the jobs that are being lost, a lot of them are jobs that people who want to go into the creative world will do to support themselves. So copy editors or or conceptual artwork, things like that. These are the people who are being fired to say I can do it. And in some cases, it's these people's own work that's now being consumed and kind of vomited back. So what that means is that it's becoming even harder for a student to decide to pursue a career in the creative arts because the usual early jobs aren't really there anymore. So what does that mean? What's going to happen? Will anybody who isn't already rich be able to try to pursue the arts? And the other thing is most benefits that are found for co-creating with generative AI go away when the creator no longer has access to generative AI. So if you can now do something more creatively by using generative AI, that doesn't transfer. You're not learning. They just announced recently that generative AI, or at least ChatGPT, is going to have ads. Right now, generative AI is losing money. What's going to happen when the free version gets worse and worse and the paid version gets more and more expensive? I worry. I mean, when everything suddenly became computerized, you had a whole generation, in this case, often people in their 30s or 40s, who were trained on typewriters, suddenly had computers and couldn't handle it, and they lost their careers. We have a generation of students who've been trained on generative AI to everything, and what happens if it becomes suddenly elite or privileged? What happens to this whole generation? This said, for all of these threats, and not just by generative AI, I mean, just you know, look around. I still feel most people, not even many, most people of all ages have this strong need to create. People want to create. I'm hoping that that will sustain us. I'm hoping, I'm turning to that for my optimism for the future. Um, so, so much more to say. I want to make sure there's lots of time for questions. Um, And I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to turn it over.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, James. That was fantastic. I will say there were several comments in praise of your visuals. So those really struck a chord with the audience and made people laugh. So there are some questions in the chat. Um, Tony Bolani asked, um, well, now they're coming in fast and furious. Do you see a danger of a generation raised on AI being cut off from our natural tendency of being creative?
Absolutely, very, very, very much so. I mean, we have to try something to like it. There's a reason why, like, one of the best things you can do if you want your kids to be creative, introduce them to stuff, both consuming and creating. And I mean, most people, including myself, we're lazy. We're run by inertia. And if there's an obvious, easy way to get out of work, we'll do it. And I mean, I'm no different. If I could press a button and have every email in my inbox automatically be responded to, I'd do it in a second. Um, if I could create a clone that could go and like teach my classes and I could just sleep late, you know. So yeah, I think most students, when in doubt, will gravitate towards AI. And you need those failures, you need those frustrations, you need those struggles to, that's part of falling in love with whatever your creative thing is. For me, it was writing. That doesn't mean I enjoyed it when I was starting out. It doesn't mean that all of it's fun. Um, yeah, I'm very, very concerned.
Thank you. This is an interesting one. Can you speak to the value of boredom in creativity?
Yes. There's a lot of work on mind wandering and how mind wandering can really help with creativity, help with making these kind of remote associations we need, can help with incubation. Mind wandering tends to happen when you're bored. There's a reason that a lot of times people get those insights when they're doing something that requires their body to be doing something else. So, like if you're driving, your mind wanders if you know where you're going, or if you're showering or brushing your teeth or any of that stuff. So, boredom does help us get um, creative ideas because it lets our mind wander, which again is a, I mean, I always like the biggest hypocrite because on one hand, we don't tend to let ourselves be bored anymore. On the other hand, I'm included in that group. You know, I mean, it's not like I'm sitting here, and I let my, musing. If I don't have something to do, I'm probably on my phone or watching something or doing something. So, uh, but
Thank you. So this is going back to a point you made in the beginning of your talk about spending time in creativity. And Ethan was asking about or pointing out that that was sort of uh, if you're spending time in creativity, you're working towards an outcome. So if the claim is that time spent being creative is what matters, does this align to the Ken Stanley? I'm not sure who that is exactly, but the myth of the objective sort of idea that there are only some things that you can find by not looking at them. So he said, not a specific question here, just interested in the claim about the benefit from the time spent being creative and how that is measured.
Usually the way it's measured is you ask people, so there's two ways. If you have funding, then you use the experience sampling technique where you, I think it sends a text now to people. Usually it could be once a day, it could be 5 times a day. And it just says either what did you spend time on today or what are you doing right now? And usually I'll ask them other questions. If you don't have funding, you ask people to retrospectively estimate how many hours a week you spend doing this, that, this. And so it's literally hours spent in these different activities. We can't guarantee they're being creative or that they're being, I mean, when we've done this, uh, we found that if you ask people how many hours do you spend and then you list all these different creative activities, we found it added up to more hours than there are in a week. So people aren't necessarily great at this, but experience sampling is also there. And it's a way of, I mean, can we guarantee they're being creative? I mean, they could be drawing, but doing it not creatively. But usually it's done either retrospective self-report or in the moment self-report. Um, and there is that barrier of, okay, well, how do you know people are being honest or telling the truth? And that's legit. But I also feel like there's been enough stuff that has been done that I feel like actual engagement is a reason, has been reasonably sustained.
Great answer. Thank you. So I think Jacob, uh, James's older son, might be a Gen Z. So there's a question about Gen Zers. What do you think are some of the ways we can garner the interest of Gen Z and Gen Alpha to want to learn and do for the sake of learning and doing? Basically, how do we encourage taking pride in their work? Whew, that's a tough question.
If I knew that, um, I mean, of my two boys, I think one's Gen Z, one's Gen Alpha. I mean, certainly the biggest thing that I do both with my kids and with my students is anytime there's is engagement or interest, I try to maximize it. I try to make sure to not dismiss it, to always allow time to listen, to be an active listener. Um, if I mean, one thing I've started doing with my undergrads, you know, I have them do a big creative project, and for the last year, I've included mandatory 10-minute one-on-one meetings where we talk about it. And I found that's helped. And again, just talking. When they're lost about what to do, I try, well, what do you like doing? What do you enjoy doing? Um, but so to a certain degree, just, I mean, it's the hard part. It's investing time and talking and listening and being present. And none of this is easy.
Yeah, you got a heart in reaction to that. Yeah, I resonate with that as well. So this is maybe not as hard of a question, but definitely a big question. In your experience, is creativity a highly personalized trait or a trait that varies from person to person? We only have about 15 minutes left, but maybe you can cover a bit of that.
Could you ask me it one more time? I want to make sure I understand the two poles. Sorry.
Sure. Yeah. So is creativity a highly personalized trait that varies from person to person?
I think the most of the ways we currently measure it don't get at that. Um, but I do think the way it is manifested and expressed is very personal. I think there's surprisingly comparatively little research on interests and passions. So there's generic passion. So there people study passion, and it's usually either harmonious, in other words, it's good passion, or obsessive, which is not good passion. With interests, we have some models, but I feel like what inspires us to be creative is often highly personal. I feel like the way it manifests itself, not, and this is stuff I've been thinking about, like we we study domains. Is that the best way to do it? Are there other ways? So with Matt Werwood, we have a very recently the cause model where we're trying to, when we're inspired by something, what do we want to do with it creatively? Where do we want to try to connect? So if I think the example we use is if you have people who see a tree and are struck by it, like connection could be, wanting to find out, um, crap, this is where I actually don't remember the link, but connection is wanting to find out how might you be linked to it? What might you have in common with this thing? Apply is making it practical. Understand is the more not necessarily scientific, but wanting to know the history or the details or how it works. Share is wanting to amplify it and um, let other people know. And then express is your own reactions. And I'm not saying this is the answer, but like I feel like there are other ways of how people create that are different from divergent thinking, are different even from what domains they do. We just need more research on this. Um, I mean, there's some growing work on inspiration, which I think is fascinating. Um, I mean, my worry, like a lot of the creativity journals are going in very empirical, quantitative, modern science in terms of, and I'm not against replication movement or sharing stuff or any of that stuff, but emphasizing the methods and empiricism over sometimes the interestingness. And I get it. I understand why. I think it's a reason why the creativity journals have gotten better impact factors. I just want to make sure we don't lose the interesting explorations that can answer some of these questions.
Thank you. Well, if you'll indulge me in letting me ask a question myself, in terms of wellness and creativity, is there some either sort of subcomponent of well-being, like meaning or social connection, um, that you'd like to see advanced, or some sort of methodology that you would like to see in the future, or just more broadly, like what would you like to see in terms of well-being research in the future?
So meaning is the thing that most interests me. And when I first started looking at it, almost nobody had looked at it with creativity. There have been some studies now, but almost all of them surveys and surveys. And I get it. That's the easier thing. Um, I would love to see more new ways of looking at it. So, and the problem is that AI has made it very hard to do this now. But like having people, for example, write creatively and having what they write about be related to meaning or well-being or any of this stuff, and analyzing how they write. But again, what I've been finding more recently is when I do studies with writing, 30 to 40% of participants use AI, which makes it harder. And in a study we're about to write up, if you ask them not to, they're less likely to do it, but they're also less creative. Um, I don't know why we haven't thought about that yet. Um, I love to see more stuff with professionals. I we're just submitting a book where we had creativity people write brief essays on things, and then we had theater artists respond to them and write like a page or two on their gut reactions. And the one that struck me was one actress who's reasonably well known responding to a chapter, I think it was on emotions, where all the studies were on students, on student actors. And she's like, yeah, but professional actors don't do this. And if you do this, anybody who does this wouldn't last a week. Um, and it's like, well, I'd love to see more studies with professional actors. And we have some. There just aren't very many of them. And I mean, like for example, Matthias Benedict, who he and his team did a study on motives for creativity with students, and they just did a study where they were able to do pro C artists, and they found a new motive that wasn't there with students, but it was there when you're looking at professionals. In this case, it was a level of passion. But I feel like in general, the way that creativity can help well-being. I mean, so much of all the stuff we do is on students, and it's on students usually from a subject pool. And look, I get it. That's most of what I do. But I just think it limits our level of insight and what we can do and what we can have people do. And given that funding is either dried up or certainly not going to creativity, um, I don't have any obvious solutions. I've been hoping to collaborate with some artists and have been laying the, in this case, theater people, because that's the group I like. But we'll see. That's what I would love.
Well, your contact information has been posted in the chat. So if there are any theater people in the audience, you can reach out to James for a study. And that goes back to finding those motivations, to the idea of individual differences and personal creativity, how there are differences, even at levels of creativity. So there was another question about AI. In your opinion, what is the most fundamental element that AI does not have and that prevents it from being able to really create um, such, in terms of like big C creativity?
I mean, certainly AI is trained on what is and what exists. Um, to a certain degree, obviously, people are trained on that too, but people can think I mean, people have human experience. AI can theoretically connect anything ever there, everything out there, any, billions of connections. But humans have that lived experience and kind of idiosyncratic, sometimes not logical way of thinking, and can have a thought that nobody's ever had before. I think that's a big one. I think just AI, it can create creative products, but it isn't a person. It doesn't have these experiences. Um, it doesn't have that essence of what makes us human. So I think the same way animals very much can be creative. Um, but in that case, they lack this communication element. I just got this mean lacking and a little different.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we have time for just about one more question. And there was a question. Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Um, so we have a question. Are you seeing a shift in creative professional communities as organizations use AI instead of hiring the professionals they once did? How are those professionals viewing their own value? Um, how has their motivation changed? And what paths are you seeing them take to overcome these difficulties? And if you want me to read that again, I can.
No, I actually, so my niece co-founded a group, a company that is for digital artists, like the people who use technology to like do layouts and concepts art and animation, and to help first generation underrepresented kids connect with both learning it and then connecting them to Disney and Pixar. And she's been doing this for over a decade. And I remember several years ago now, when ChatGPT had just started, maybe the first year, I was still kind of intrigued by it. And she was the one who first was like, this is going to be terrible. And basically, she's seen a lot of the people who she placed at all these companies, they're the first people to get laid off. Um, I mean, I think it's terrible. I think it's demoralizing. I think we're going to lose generations of artists. Um, I mean, live performance, perhaps at least as of now, is one of the few things that AI can't run out of business. But my 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 worry for the future is that we're going to see most art split, where you have the amateurs who do it purely for love. You have the people who are so good that people will pay a premium to have that work. Um, but I think we're losing the soul of it. I mean, I think it's part of many things, but it's the same way. Like if anybody watched the Oscars, Warner Brothers was behind One Battle After Another and Sinners, and you had, these marvelous movies done by these brilliant creators, and meanwhile, Warner Brothers has been sold. It's now part of a huge conglomerate. And the next thing that's going to happen is they're going to stop making these kind of movies because they don't make enough money. Um, so a lot of people saw these Oscars as a last hurrah for any type of mid-market movie making, where as it is already, you have most movies are kind of generic crap or small indies, but you still had this year movies like One Battle After Another, Sinners, Hamnet, Begonia, and these kind of mid-level movies which have enough studio support to make them be medium. A lot of those are going to go away. Um, I mean, the short answer is if I think too much about this, I get very, very sad and depressed. Um, I wish I had a more heartening or optimistic or even practical answer.
I was going to say that is a very depressing note to end on. Is there any maybe optimistic message that we might close out the morning with?
The fact that I still think people love being creative. It's kind of like the Jurassic Park where like life finds a way. Like kids still want to put on a show. Even now when it's Broadway prices are insane. The odds on anybody ever getting a show produced are harder and harder, or an actor making on Broadway harder and harder, or supporting themselves. I mean, one of the books I'm working on is with a dear friend of mine who's a well-known composer, Dana Rowe, and it's called So You Have a Theater Kid. We've interviewed over 50 people, including like Stephen Schwartz and David Zippel and Donna McKechnie and Joanna Gleason, all these people, but also others, folks you've never heard of. The passion is there at all levels. The kids have the passion. They want to do it. A lot of folks are going to keep doing it. A lot of folks said, this is what I want to do. If I had to be a waiter my whole life and do this in my spare time, that's what I would do.
Well,
That's
thank you
what
so
you saw.
much, James. And something that I've so appreciated in all the years that I've known you is that you are very honest about the reality, but also very still hold this like optimism and, search for meaning and dedication to well-being, which you very much live out in the way that you live your life and interact with other people. So thank you for all that you do for our community, and thank you for a wonderful talk today. Let's give a big round of applause to Dr. James Kaufman. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everybody.
So with that, we are concluding our morning session, and I want to turn it over to Dr. Gerard Puccio, the chair of the Creativity and Change Leadership Department at Buffalo State. And he will sort of orient us into where we are in the day to day and make a few announcements, and then we will break for lunch, or depending on where you are in the world, take a break for a snack or what have you. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Gerard Puccio. And again, thank you, James, for being here this morning.
Thank you, Dr. Hollinger. Dr. Yates, I can share my own slides because I did update the slides a bit. Thanks for sharing the slides that were created previously, but things have changed. And so I will now bring up my own slide. So here we go. Okay. So I want to thank James. Super inspirational. When I think about all the effort that goes into planning the conference, get so focused on the tactics. Speaking of the joy of creativity, it's this exchange of ideas, this interplay that is incredibly inspirational. So thank you so much for that excellent presentation, James. I'm really caught up in the moment and reflecting on how much this exchange has grown over the years, which in my mind is emblematic of the desire for people to nurture their own creativity and tend to their own creativity. As you rightly pointed out, it is the essence of our human experience, and it will always find a way. So while artificial intelligence may move into the domain of doing creativity, it should not replace the being side of creativity, because it is so gratifying and so rewarding. So here's where we are. We wrapped up our keynote. As Dr. Hollinger indicated, we're going to be going into a virtual meal coffee break. We pick back up local time at 12:15. From 12:15 to 1 o'clock is the first block of concurrent sessions. Short break for 15 minutes, and then again, this is New York, Toronto time zone. Between 1:15 and 2 o'clock is the second block of concurrent session. We're breaking records this year. We had more people register for C than we have had register ever in our history. Over 325 registrants. We had 135 participating in the keynotes today, which is a good percentage of those who registered. So thank you for contributing to our exchange by joining us. And I will say in the concurrent sessions, we have a record number of concurrent sessions thanks to Kristen Peterson and those of you out in the community that responded positively to our call for presentation. So we do have a record number of presentations, record number of participants who will be going into and joining those sessions. At the bottom of the screen here and dropped into the chat box, if you haven't found it yet, is the link to the website where the program is located, which will take you to the Zoom sessions for our concurrent sessions. At the end of the day from 2 to 2:15, we do not gather again in the main room. Instead, the conference ends in the concurrent sessions. So those of you who volunteered to moderate the sessions at the end of our conference, you'll be wrapping up, and I ask you to encourage the participants in that 2 to 2:15 timeframe as an extension of the last concurrent session to do a little bit of reflection and thinking about the key takeaways from today. I know I've made massive notes based on James' keynote. Folks to thank, a lot of sweat equity has gone into the Creativity Expert Exchange. This is run based on the generous contributions of volunteers. So Dr. David Yates, who manages the digital production of the Creativity Expert Exchange. And let me say, if you enjoyed, especially at the end of James' keynote, the connections to artificial intelligence, and as James indicated, tomorrow's keynote will be delivered by Dr. Yates. Some fascinating research coming out. Dr. Yates and his team of graduate students have been working with the development of a creative problem-solving chatbot, which has illuminated some of the limitations that AI has in terms of engaging in creative thinking. As we know, it's a higher order thinking skill that requires mindfulness and metacognition. And I think Dr. Yates will touch on some of the limitations that he and his team ran into in terms of interacting with and trying to coach, train, develop chatbots to be able to mirror and facilitate creative problem solving with users. A little bit of a preview for tomorrow. Want to thank the C committee, Kristen Peterson. Again, we have record number of individuals doing concurrent sessions. I must say I struggled with making decisions about what concurrent sessions I wanted to attend, and I want to reinforce the fact, as Dr. Firestein mentioned early on, if you can't attend a concurrent session, they are being recorded. And we will send out after the conference how to access those recordings. So again, thank you to Kristen Peterson, Michaela Ackerbauer, our amazing graduate assistant, who developed the Eventbrite site, created the website to support C, and so many other things, and also corrected, by the way. Thank you, participants, for letting us know that the Eventbrite site, the sales had closed. It now has been reopened. It was reopened in short order thanks to Michaela. So if you, based on the invitation of Dr. Firestein, if you wish to go back and make a donation, we certainly would appreciate that. Dr. Mike Ackerbauer also played a role in supporting Kristen Peterson with the concurrent session. Susan Rizzo, our very capable admin assistant, has been supporting everyone in terms of preparations for the Creativity Expert Exchange. Special shout out and thank you to the moderators who are volunteering their time, and of course the concurrent session presenters who came forward to deliver the forthcoming sessions. Some upcoming events, as Dr. Firestein alluded to. For those in Western New York, a good old face-to-face in-person event is happening tomorrow night from 6 to 8 o'clock. We are creating an innovation suite in Butler Library here at Buffalo State University. Phase 1 of that innovation suite opened up last summer. That is the Alex F. Osborne Brainstorming Room, a space for creative collaboration. Before the Creative Problem Solving Institute coming this summer, June 14 to 18, we will be opening up the Parnes Creativity Collection, and we'll be, in fact, doing a reception, most likely during SIPSE, to officially open up that space. But before we do that, we need to dress it up. And we have a fantastic local artist, Syra Siddiqui, who has already led an in-person and shared a digital survey to gather ideas for what the imagery might look like in that space. She's developed some concepts that she'll be sharing out tomorrow night here in Buffalo. Invite anyone who is local to join us by going and registering for this at the Eventbrite site, and then coming to Buffalo State and Butler Library tomorrow night between 6 and 8 to see what those visual concepts are and provide some feedback. We will also be sending out a digital survey with the graphics as well to collect feedback. There are those who actually reported at the beginning of today's session that they attended CEE and then came into our graduate program. And if you're interested in learning more about our graduate program, we are doing an information session on April 9th from 5 to 6 o'clock, New York, Toronto time zone, and there's the Eventbrite registration for that. If you know you want to jump into our graduate program already, we are accepting applications. The URL for Buffalo State's application process is at the top of this slide. Again, we offer a master's and certificate program, courses starting this summer for those locally. The distance program, we admit a cohort each summer. First 9-week course is in late May and running for 9 weeks into the end of July. And as Dr. Keller Mathers mentioned when she was doing the welcoming, we're excited to announce that we now have a Doctor of Professional Studies, the DPS, which will start this fall. We are accepting applications for the DPS program through to April 15. Lots of ways to stay connected with us, which are shown here on the screen. Before I jump off, let me just say the main room will be left open. So if you wish to interact with one another, it will be open, this main Zoom room, for 20 minutes or so. But we encourage you to stay connected with us by looking at these resources and joining either our listserv or participate in our social media as well. And with that, I'm going to say thank you to you all for joining us. This room will remain open. To join the concurrent sessions, go to the program, find the appropriate link, and go to that specific session later today. Hope to see you tomorrow as well. Thank you all.
And someone asked about the link to donations because Michaela's fixing it. So she's a whiz.
Yeah, it's all updated. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened with that donation link.
Technology does not cooperate.
Great start this morning, everybody. Great start, huh?
They really go back to the where they applied, and I put that link in. C program along something about donating.
Yeah,
I know I put it in and I lost it.
I'll repaste it
On the donate session too.